And the NFL offseason is really, really here. Kevin Bowen back, another edition of Kevin's Corner. Chris Presley is across the way. It's February 9th, Tuesday, around lunchtime we are recording this. I feel like that's important to say in a news cycle that you never know when things will break. So we'll cross our fingers that we can get through the next hour or so, and it'll at least be somewhat timeless as we get into your inbox throughout the rest of the week, man. This is where we're at next month. We'll be breaking down every scenario you can imagine. We've got Jacob Eason joining us on the podcast later today. Hope you guys enjoyed the Marcus Brady interview from last week. Again, Jacob Eason did an interview with him on JMV, and we'll play that here for those that might have missed it. So he'll be on the pod, and we'll talk a little wideout left tackle, Chris Ballard with Dan Dakich.
Mm-hmm.
This is a nice chunky pod coming out of the Super Bowl, man.
Yeah, this is going to be a pretty, thought-provoking podcast, I would imagine. You mentioned Jacob Eason's going to be on. Really loved his interview. What's your take so far, Kevin, on a lot of the coaching replacements so far with the Colts?
Yeah, it's a handful, I think 5, maybe even 6 openings. I'm not sure Frankie Ross, special teams assistant, is the 5th or the 6th, but yeah, Press Taylor, it sounds like he'll be the quarterback's coach or passing game, something or other. And then Scotty Montgomery, a running back's coach, I think is the other name that we've seen as well, who was a head coach at East Carolina at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of anybody else off the top of my head that I've seen fill in. I don't want to sound like it's like, I'm ripping on these assistant coaches by any means, but I don't think it's earth-shattering news. I mean, sure, you've had some staff turnover. It's notable, but you are bringing back the most important positions when you're talking head coach / offensive system / play caller, and then defensive coordinator with that defensive system, and then special teams coordinator, I think is also key to bring back. So your 3 most important people on game day, are going to be back in the building. So we'll see how all that plays out. Again, dominoes, continue to fall in that realm. But now we're, supposedly, or supposed to be, I should say, just a couple weeks away from a normal combine. Obviously, that won't be the case this year, but we're going to start to get free agency news, trade news, of course, trickle out, I think, over the next few weeks. And once you get to about March, 7th, 8th, that's when you start to get to a lot of re-signings for teams, apply some franchise tag. I think that deadline is kind of right in that mix. I think it starts in late February, if I'm not mistaken. And then the new league year on March 17th. Is when things really, really get going there. And I think tampering starts 2 days before that. So we'll obviously hear some news begin then. Before we jump into the pod, your thoughts on Tom Brady and the Bucs just really beating the shit out of the Chiefs. Yeah, and I say that with a lot of regret financially.
Yeah, it was one of the least enjoyable Super Bowls in my era of watching, or at least that I remember. I think
because Brady was doing the ass kicking.
Not only that, but I think just everything in general. The commercials weren't that great, other than Paramount. Good for you for spending millions of dollars every commercial break. It seemed like doing a commercial.
Yeah, that's some wild people in that commercial.
The Weeknd was okay. I mean, I knew every song. Nothing wowed me with that, and then just the performance on the field wasn't that great. I tweeted out, I'm going to bend the knee, little Game of Thrones reference. Tom Brady, like I mentioned, I do respect him. Shit, you just have to, 7 Super Bowls.
Yeah, it's remarkable, man. Yeah, as far as, I agree with a lot of what you just said there. We've been a bit spoiled, I think, in Super Bowls, that they have been great, great games over the past, 10, 12 years. This one was certainly not that. I was stunned. I thought people were overlooking a bit Kansas City's missing both of their starting offensive tackles. I felt like that was not really, people just kind of overlooked that. Having said that, Mahomes looked like he was running behind a JV offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
It was, it looked like Chad Kelly in the fourth quarter of a preseason game, just, running for his life back there. And obviously when Tampa needed to make plays offensively, they did. Now, I thought Brady made a great point. I don't think he said this publicly, but some of his teammates alluded to this of he told his guys all week long, Kansas City's defense, they don't want to tackle. They don't want to tackle Leonard Fournette. And Tampa's got a lot invested in that offensive line as well.
Yeah.
And they really established that. And I thought, early on when Kansas City had chances. I mean, Tampa, I think, punted their first 2 possessions. That's golden opportunities right there from the Chiefs to play from ahead, which is not something we're typically used to them doing in the postseason. And the fact that they only got 3 points early on, it was kind of like, you're playing with fire a little bit, and then just an abomination of a second quarter from a penalty standpoint. Yes, I thought the officiating was way too whistle happy in that second quarter compared to I watched Green Bay and Tampa play in the NFC title game. I feel like nothing was called.
Yeah.
But still, just some dumb penalties from the Chiefs, and that's where, again, the whole game changed for me there of, it's 14-6. If you go into halftime, you get the ball to start the third, it's still one possession game, all that stuff. And boy, how many penalties do they have? Gronk got the third down conversion on that final drive. Then Breland trips and falls and hits Mike Evans' foot, and that's called a penalty. And Honey Badger gets a penalty in the end zone on a ball that I thought was uncatchable, but I guess you got to call it there. And that's where I really thought it turned. 21-6 now at half, and then the first drive of the third quarter, Kansas City only gets 3, and that's a huge win for Tampa. And they go down and score, and that was it. So, Brady, literally, he deserves his own wing in Canton, as much as it pains me, and I'm sure a lot of listeners for me to say it, and a lot of listeners to hear that. In the game of football, guys just don't do what he's done. And, what really stands out to me, Chris, and obviously 7 Super Bowls speaks for itself, he had the massive gap there without one. Mm-hmm. And, you think those are prime years. Age, 28 to 30, I think it's 36?
Yeah, if you look at the bookends of his dynasties, there was a huge chunk there in the middle of his prime that he didn't go to a Super Bowl.
Right, or win. Got to, the Giants, kind of had his number
That's
there.
True. That's true.
And there weren't, that to me, I guess, Chris, stands out the most of 7 Super Bowls in a decade would be unbelievably incredible. But 7 Super Bowls over, 19-some years, 18-some years, 2 different organizations now, that really, really stands out even more to me. So, good job, Bruce Arians. I'm happy for him.
I am happy for BA, yeah.
I'm happy for some of those coaches on that staff. But, God, financially, oh, man. Nothing like, it's late fourth quarter. I still had a couple bets open. I tried to hedge hard with Tampa, and so but I needed Kansas City to make it a little bit closer than they did. Mm-hmm. And nothing like Maddie looking at me and saying, "So how much did you lose?" And I'm just like, God, I thought you were asleep. I'm like, oh man, can't we?
Yeah, because at that point she's saying, "How much did we lose?"
Yeah, she did. Yeah, key pronoun usage there. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm like, wow, I've got some Super Bowl squares. Let me check the squares. Oh, of course not. 18th year, I've just flushed money down the toilet.
I never went on squares.
I never won. How about here? The same woman won the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Oh.
I bought 10. I bought 10 squares.
Did you really?
Yeah. Gosh. I was like, I got to hit on one of them, right?
You need to go to the nursing home and play bingo.
I know. No kidding.
So, yeah, good work, Tampa Bay. Sad the season's over. Kudos in the NFL. Incredible. They pulled it off. Resources obviously help, and being the last big league to get into it helped. They could learn a whole lot, but still, I don't think we expected every game to go and to be on schedule like that as well. So,
let's talk a little bit about, obviously, Kansas City. They got there based on how they've drafted and picked up free agents over the years. A key part of that was Chris Ballard and his tenure there.
Yeah.
Chris Ballard, the Colts GM, was on with Dan Dakich, our afternoon host, last week. What were some of your takeaways on that 40-minute interview? And if people haven't listened to it, you can go to, obviously, our YouTube page, scroll down here a little bit, and you'll be able to see that interview. But I thought it was very candid and open, as Chris Ballard always is.
Certainly. And Dan does not hold back with any punches there, and did not either in that interview. So I always enjoy it. It's kind of been a late January, early February ritual for those two. Again, as we record this on Tuesday morning, I did, he definitely didn't deny Carson Wentz rumors. Not today, I believe, what was the comment he made about a trade possibly going down. And that's a pretty vague answer, when you look at it from a breaking news standpoint. Obviously, he quickly put out Andrew Luck fires, even more than Jim Irsay did. And that was to be expected. I guess let's just start with quarterbacks there. I think we have a question about Jacoby in the Twitter questions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So let's maybe hold off on Jacoby thoughts there. Let's get to Eason. I thought what stood out to me was, Dan asked him very directly, is he smart? Chris answers, yes, he's smart. That's important. Duh. People will say, but it is important because, again, he's grasping a different system. And, I think what we have to keep in mind, too, is about, Jacob Eason was in two vastly different scenarios in college. You start as a true freshman at Georgia.
Yeah.
There's going to be some sort of, dude, you got to have one hand tied behind you. We can't empty the playbook in a night game, against Auburn. We just can't do that. Sorry. And then, of course, Washington, he comes there, much different offense system as well. And it was his first year, playing for them. So I just think how he grasps a playbook, how he handles what an NFL system is all about, I thought that was important. But then Dan followed up with, is he tough? And I thought Chris was very, very honest in saying, we think he's tough, but we don't know if he's tough. And that's what I keep on getting back to. I mentioned this when I filled in for J&V last Tuesday. Will Carroll, who, you guys have heard him on our airwaves, and kind of an injury expert in town, he tweeted something to the effect of man, I keep on talking to Colts people, and they just don't know about Jacob Eason. And, said it caught me as, he was surprised at that tone. How would they know? I mean, when you're talking about the quarterback position, I don't think there's a position in sports, Chris, that's more different from practice than a game than a quarterback. You literally wear a different color jersey because people aren't supposed to touch you, let alone hit you.
Yes. And
now all of a sudden you go in a game, and did you see some of the hits Patrick Mahomes took on Sunday night?
Just being bent over, just like a corkscrew.
I was he is more flexible than Rosie Bowe, and I'm like, how? What? How is he getting those throws off? So that's the toughness element. They thought he was tough at college. Fine. NFL's a different animal. Different animal, folks. And so I think that is just we shouldn't be surprised that the Colts don't know. It's difficult. You are trying to project at a position that, again, I think is the toughest to go from practice into a game setting. Quarterback-wise, this is probably my biggest takeaway, Chris. Oftentimes, Chris mentioned, league is driven by the quarterback, this and that, and again, he's always hinted at that. But I felt like more times than not, he pointed out the fact that maybe you don't need the crazy dynamic quarterback. And I'll mention a few of these references. To me, that's a bit worrisome. I think you do need the dynamic quarterback. I think, again, it is your best opportunity at achieving the long term and the sustained success that we talk about so often. But basically, Chris said, and I have the quote here, we're looking at every avenue to make sure we have a guy who is functional and can produce at a winning level for us. He also says, I would put it this way, if everyone thinks we're just going to all of a sudden plop and a Pat Mahomes or Lamar Jackson is just going to land in our lap, that's not realistic. Those guys are rare guys. When you get the opportunity to identify a guy like that and then move up to get him, great. Saying that, you can win football games with good quarterback play. It might not be special quarterback play, but you can win with good quarterback play, and we think we can.
There's a difference, though, in terms of, you can win. We won with Phillip Rivers, but you don't win at all.
Yeah, win in lowercase, win in all caps.
Right.
Those are different elements of winning. I would call the Colts a winning franchise for the most part over the last decade. I'd call the Patriots, or I'd call, whoever else has won multiple Super Bowls, I guess maybe Pittsburgh or someone else that you throw in there, win in all caps type of appearances that have been routine in the month of January, getting all the way there.
Right.
We've talked about in this podcast, when you look over the last 6 years and the Colts haven't won a division title and haven't won multiple playoff games, and over half the NFL have done both those things. That's where you get into, okay, functional is fine. I'm not talking about a Week 13 game when you're in a kind of a dire situation and, oh, boy, we got to turn to our backup. We think he's functional. We think he can get it done. But you're talking 16 games. You're talking the month of January. You're talking about Tom Brady going on the road and winning every playoff game this year. that's where it is a different animal to me. And I just thought that was interesting from Chris that he referenced that again on several occasions. He mentioned how, Rivers, the quote was, I think that's one of the things lost here. There's a way to win every game. How do you do it? Phillip finally figured out how to do it. I don't need to make a hero play every game for us to win. Mm-hmm. I can do what is expected. We're good enough on defense and special teams.
Yeah.
There is a decent amount of validity to that, but again, I feel like if you are hesitant or afraid to try and take a chance at that position, I think you're always going to have a bit of a cap on how high you can reach and how high you can reach for several years. And I know that might scare some people, but I just think it's reality. So that was interesting to me. I mean, he made it very clear of what point is your ability to be aggressive, but the whole balance of aggression versus desperation. And I do feel like, some people have pointed this out of like, aggression and desperation, yes, those are two big different words, but man, there can also be a fine line in that of like, if you aren't aggressive to a point, are you teetering close to being desperate, for more off seasons than you want to be? So, and is this the time to be aggressive? When you think about it, Chris, of like the early returns on the 2022 draft class at quarterback aren't great, and you're sitting here with 5 or 6 top 20 quarterbacks potentially. Is this the time to say, hey, our need meets the demand that seemingly is out there for that quarterback group as well? So I guess quarterback related, that's kind of what stood out to me. I thought the whole, we're not going to be, Twitter's desperate or whatever his quote was about Twitter that he mentioned there. Was that in reference to like the Carson Wentz, some of the trade packages? Sure. Part of me always just thinks the quarterback value just gets driven up.
Yep.
So,
I thought he was very, I wouldn't say political, but he was very smart in phrasing, and I don't necessarily think he's wrong completely, but if you notice during the interview, him talking about how much time this team still has left, he's like,
cracking the window.
Yeah, we're just cracking the window.
Yeah.
Like, we're not all the way there. When most Colts feel like we are right now in our prime, he made it a point to say, we're still, we still have time. These guys are under 26. There's a lot of guys under 26 years of age that we can still develop.
And, Chris, that was the point that I made a few weeks back when I rattled off all those names. Remember, I'm sure people were like, oh, my God, how many players is he going to name? But, like, tell me I shouldn't have named all those guys. They are important building blocks. So I think we can all acknowledge here, and we have definitely done this, that Jim Irsay calling them a Super Bowl team right now, honestly, is a ludicrous statement. Like, they have massive needs at key spots. But I thought Chris's analogy of the window is cracking, I kind of like that. Mm-hmm. Because I do think it's cracking. Now, to get that window fully open, you've got to make some big-time, achieve some big-time answers at important spots, as we've alluded to. But again, I feel like from ages 22 to 26, as Chris referenced, there is a lot to like about that group. Mm-hmm. And that's where I come back to the 5 to 7 year window that I've mentioned. I don't think this is 2 or 3 years. I don't think this is super win now. I wouldn't be panicking like I would be if I was in New Orleans or the Rams or Chicago or maybe some of these other spots. No, I think the Colts have hit on a lot of solid draft picks, and it is something that I think you have the opportunity to continue to build with. He did mention that the decisions this offseason, he thinks start at quarterback and then go to left tackle. I think at left tackle, which we're going to hit on here in a few minutes, he seems pretty open to Quentin Nelson or Braden Smith, which I was a little bit surprised by.
Yeah.
Now, he made it very clear, does it make your team better? Does it make your offensive line better? What are you sacrificing by potentially moving one of those guys? It was interesting. We had Jeff Saturday on the morning show a few weeks back, and Jeff, and I ended up writing an article on this, he mentioned what's the opportunity cost. I think that's a great way to describe it. Again, of, Okay, Nelson at left tackle. Okay, what's Costanzo to Nelson's level of play? Okay, Nelson to left guard.
Mm-hmm.
What is Danny Pinter coming in for Quentin Nelson? How do you weigh that? How much better that makes your entire offensive line? So, someone mentioned to me the other day about when you move Nelson over to left tackle, you've got some support around whoever is the new guard, in that you have Nelson at left tackle and Ryan Kelly at center. Either of those guys can help out your left guard, which is a good point. I also am like, well, you still have an unknown to a degree. I mean, Nelson is a bit of an unknown at left tackle. I don't think it's like a panic move or anything like that, but it's certainly an unknown there. The Braden Smith comment that he made also stood out to me. He compared it to, and he was talking to an offensive line coach who said it would be like a right-handed golfer learning how to play left-handed.
Yeah. Hey, Phil.
Yeah. That's pretty drastic. That's a significant, move. And again, I will reiterate, I don't think Braden Smith has played on the left side of the line since high school.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to act like I know where his Kansas City offensive line, played him. But Quentin Nelson went to Notre Dame wanting to play left tackle. That was his desire. Now, when you have the guys that they did up there, you understand why he didn't play left tackle. But it's at least, I think, been on his mind. But it seems like he's open to it. Get your best 5 on the field. That was the thing that he, obviously kept on saying, which sounds very, very cliche, but I actually believe him there. So, yeah, those are kind of the big takeaways, Chris. Skill group wise, loves Pittman, loves Taylor, really believes in Paris Campbell. Still very much of this is bad luck. And I just wrote something on Campbell that I'll post in a couple days. I forgot he got hurt on the second play of the home opener.
Yeah.
After 6 catches for 91 yards in the season opener.
Mm-hmm.
And the play got hurt on 7-yard jet sweep. That's getting him an early touch. And Harrison Smith just wrong play, right place at the right time, wrong place at the wrong time, whatever you want to call it, but just literally hits him in the perfect worst spot possible. And
I mean, those Notre Dame guys are just dirty.
Oh, God, come on now. Harrison Smith was one of my favorite players growing up.
Him and Zibby, man. When you talk about safeties at Notre Dame growing up, love it.
Yeah. Harrison Smith's had a hell of a run here.
Yes, he has. Well, you want to talk about part of what Ballard mentioned? Dan did ask him about T.Y. You want to talk about some wide receiver needs the Colts have?
Yeah. Yes, and I guess just Let's just hop into that. Wideout wise, okay. We have to, I think, first acknowledge Chris what Chris Ballard, how he views wide receiver. He's got positions that he loves more than wideout, and his philosophy. Mm-hmm. He kind of laughs at his scouts like, we rank every damn wideout so high, and like that's part of how college football is. Like, there's more wideouts to evaluate because teams play more of a spread look. Like,
right.
Someone with Desmond Patman's senior year sort of college production, like that never would have been someone that I think is on a lot of draft radars. But again, when you're in today's college football, you get noticed a little bit more because it's such a pass-happy system, level, whatever you want to call it there. So I just think we need to acknowledge that Chris really, really likes the depth in the draft and in free agency at wideout.
Mm-hmm.
And he's never been a big believer in that position as much as he is at other spots on the team. As far as personnel, again, bullish on Michael Pittman. And deservedly so. What Pittman gave his team after the catch, I thought was a huge element, a missing element. And I think if he can polish up a few things, he's got number one wideout sort of potential. You can say that it's bad luck with Paris Campbell, but I don't want to put too many eggs in the basket to where you're expecting Campbell to be your number 2 and then Zach Pascal to be your number 3. Like, to me, that would be a mistake. It'd be too big of a risk. Plus, I also like Campbell in a very specific role.
Yeah.
I don't want major number 2 wideout burden on him. I'm kind of like, all right, let's use him in this way. Let's use him in that way. Let's, get him touches out of the backfield, things like that. Thing about Campbell we should note again, he was durable in college. And, yes, 3 surgeries and the 4 injuries in year 1. What was it? Hernia, hamstring, foot, and finger. I think were the 4. Hamstring was in training camp. Final day that Andrew Luck ever practiced, not to be bring that up, but I'll never forget that route that Campbell had that went viral.
Mm-hmm. The separation he gets is just...
Yeah. God, who did he burn? Some corner that I don't think is around anymore. Someone will tweet it at me. Anyways, I think what we see in March, what we see in April draft-wise will show a lot of the amount of belief they have in Paris Campbell. And I really think in this offense he can just absolutely flourish.
Yeah.
But it's just like, Chris, sooner or later, if you get a 6th injury and a 7th injury, how much of it is flukish? And I mean, hell, he gets in a car accident going to practice last year and during training camp, and boom, he's in concussion protocol. Obviously, that's just bad luck. Loves Pascal, bringing him back. He's a restricted free agent. Makes sense. T.Y. I'm not sure you have the finances to bring him back and make another splash at wideout, Chris. So I think that's what you have to decide internally. How do you want to weigh those funds? And I also think the discussion you have to have is, can T.Y. evolve in now 31-year-old season? I think he'll turn 32 at some point during it. No 30-year-old wideout with 1,000 yards this past season. So that now, I think in the last 4 years, I believe it's Julio, Edelman, Antonio Brown, and Fitzgerald that have recorded 1,000-yard seasons.
Okay.
I don't think T.Y. plays like really any of them. And we're talking Antonio Brown 4 years ago. We're
Right.
not talking Antonio Brown now.
Yeah.
Edelman, such a possession guy. And again, this was 3 years ago. Julio speaks for himself. And then Larry Fitzgerald, of course, just ages like a fine wine.
Yeah.
So it's just, how much are you willing to put into that market value on him? But Chris is adamant that he sacrificed. He was the league's leading receiver in 2016, and he's never really sniffed that since then. But he's been accepting of his role. And outside of him, yelling at the offensive line for allowing 10 sacks after losing to Jacksonville, which hell, they probably should have been yelled at. In that 2017 season, T.Y. doesn't bitch. He doesn't complain. He doesn't. He's that non-diva wideout. So. Free agency-wise, there's just two different tiers for me, Chris. You've got the Allen Robinsons, the Godwins, the Jujus, the Kenny Galladays. But then you go to that second tier, and they won't get the 18, 19 million that maybe some of those guys up top will. But all of a sudden, what if Corey Davis?
Mm-hmm.
You get the top 10 pick potential. What if Will Fuller stays healthy? There's some other guys, Nelson Aguilar, Rashard Higgins, Curtis Samuel's probably a little bit more gadgety, but he's a guy that I really like. Again, he's probably too similar to Paris Campbell. Marvin Jones is a name as well. I think what you have to find, and again, it might be Pittman, who's your go-to skill guy in critical moments? Who is it? Who's the guy you're going to big down and distances? Or who's the guy that at least commands the attention to where an opposing defense says, all right, 3rd and 8, we need 2 to Pittman.
Mm-hmm.
We need 2 to Allen Robinson. Whoever. And I look at these final 4 teams this year. They all had the stud. Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, / Stephon Diggs. I mean, it's just everyone had that type of guy. So I think it's really important. Again, and I say tight end as well. Irsay mentioned that a little bit ago. Now, tight end, it's Hunter Henry, and then it really drops off.
Yeah.
Jonnu Smith has had a nice little run here in Tennessee as he gets into a contract year. You got the Sycamore up in Green Bay, Tanyan.
They got 2 up there.
Yeah, 2 of them. Dominique Daphne is the other one who spent a minute here, actually. Mo Alley is a restricted free agent, so fully expect him back. So, again, wideout and tight end have never been big areas where Chris Ballard has shelled out a lot. Now, draft-wise, they've drafted wideouts early, Pittman, Campbell. Right. But free agency money, you haven't seen it to that degree. So I just think that's something to keep in mind there. And I also look at the 5 big needs, Chris. Quarterback, wideout, left tackle, D-end, and corner. Of all those positions I feel best about somebody on the roster, it's Michael Pittman, a wideout. I'm not there with Rock Yassin. I'm not there with Kamoko Toure. I'm not there with Ben Banogu. not there with Jacob Eason. You know, all these young guys at those spots, I'm just not there with. Pittman, if you're going to make me bet on one of the positions in-house to have a guy that can become that number one, he would be the guy there.
Yeah.
Wideout will be fascinating because, again, there's just a lot of depth in free agency and the draft. And it's one of those things of you bring back Hilton and you sign a Rashard Higgins, or you sign, one of those Josh Reynolds, I think, from the Rams, just kind of a guy to throw into the mix there. Okay, how does that play out for you? Tight end, we'll see. Burton, they're not slamming the door shut on. I mean, Burton was okay. He had some decent moments. He also had some drops and just, I don't know. If you'd have told me Burton played 13 games, I would have said, 40-some catches. I think he had 28. I probably would have liked a little bit more. But having said that, I know he's unique, and he helped you out in the Wildcat and things like that. So I think you got to do something there, but I'm not holding my breath that they do something crazy there.
Yeah. Thoughts on left tackle? Thoughts about what Ballard discussed? Obviously, we talked about the Nelson and Braden Smith. Anything else stand out to you?
Chris, I keep on coming back. I guess one of the big takeaways from Ballard is, will they just find the fifth best offensive lineman, regardless of position, and bring him into camp? I don't really love that approach, to be honest with you. And Joe Wright is one of the greatest human beings out there, and I just thought his quote to JMV a few weeks ago was so great about, offensive linemen are made, offensive tackles are born.
Yeah.
Left tackles are
right.
born, I think might have been the specific aspect. You always hear that, we'll find the best five, we'll put them together and, shake it up and see what comes out. I mean, is Jeff Saturday going to go play left tackle for you?
Right.
Is A.Q. Shipley going to go play left tackle for you? Like, I think it sounds a lot better than it really is. So I kind of like some of the free agent left tackles. And again, I don't like them long term, but I feel like there is an opportunity to stopgap a little bit there. Trent Williams is obviously the big name, but
he's going to cost.
Oh yeah. But is it a Cam Robinson in his 20s where maybe you get a little bit more? Julian Davenport's a guy that was in that Laramie Tunsil situation. And some people have mentioned Joe Haig. God bless Joe Haig, almost catching that touchdown.
Yeah, we got a question about him later.
Did you realize that we had someone call in the morning show last week and said they were betting on a Joe Haig touchdown?
I did not know that. No.
Yeah. Oh yeah. $1,000.
Oh.
His friend is going to pay him out $1,000.
Now
he also claims that his friend he bet that Ray Allen would hit a 3 to force Game 7 in the 2014-2013 finals. I'm like,
is this Biff from Back to the Future?
Yeah, who's the friend? Why can't I get his number? Like, okay, I'll just throw out. I'm like, what did you have to pay him for the Joe Haig bet? He's like, oh, nothing. I'm like, this is a gambling casino that I need to get involved with.
There's a deeper world we need to dive into.
Yeah, especially after Sunday. It sounds like he's betting on Australian Barstool and Italian basketball leagues.
Like me, baby.
Yeah. getting the old big win there. By the way, have you gotten your Bills tattoo?
I've not.
What are we waiting for?
The
weather to get nicer? You want people to really see it? I want people
to see it, a little flip-flop action.
I mean,
air it out.
We got to hold you to this.
I know. I did it to myself. I can't blame anyone other than me.
That was before the Buffalo Trace shot.
Yeah. Got to do it.
Zach Banner's a free agent. Talk about a blast from the past there. Yeah. But, Villanueva from Pittsburgh, Russell Okung. Again, these guys are going to be pricey. But are there some stopgaps that you can find? Having said that, I also think a lot happens when that draft starts to unfold, and if you don't make a move at quarterback, it seems like that left tackle class is really good. And, it is something to note of, like, when you look at past Colts eras, they have found the left tackle before finding the quarterback. Tarek Glenn right before Peyton Manning, Anthony Costanzo right before Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something? And then also, I just think something we need to keep in mind, Chris. The salary cap is not at the floor I think a lot of people thought it would be. having said that, it still has gone down, and there will be cap casualty guys. You know, in a way, that was Xavier Rhodes. That was Justin Houston. So I think we just need to keep in mind, are there any of those that start to develop where it's, you know, twofold. It doesn't hurt your compensatory picks, and then also, you know, you can find a pretty good player that, again, financially has led to him going to the open market all of a sudden there. So, you know, we did DN and corner last week. I wanted to make sure we got wide end and left tackle before. I mean, we've gone however long we've gone, and we haven't really mentioned quarterback too much in this podcast. So
we talk about Band-Aid quarterbacks.
That's a win.
Kevin, would you think outside of quarterback is left tackle the next position where it's clear that you're using a Band-Aid player over a draft pick?
That I would be okay with doing that?
Just in general. Obviously, you don't want to Band-Aid. You don't want to just keep throwing in quarterbacks. Is left tackle tier 2 in terms of where you want to solidify a position player, or is there another position that you'd want to solidify above the left tackle?
I think it's edge rusher.
Okay.
You know, I think, and I know a lot of people look at the Super Bowl and be like, oh my gosh, see what happens when you have, you know, poor offensive line play. I think you have to acknowledge, again, they were missing their 2 starting tackles. Like,
right.
That's a big deal. We saw the Colts against the Steelers. Like, that's a big deal when you're down 2 of those guys. But I also saw Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh and Vita Vea. Like, when you've got that front and you've got that pass rush, that to me probably stands out a little bit more. Just because, you know, you got Buckner at D tackle. I just feel like you got to find more consistent edge rush.
All right, well, we have Jacob Eason on the show today.
Yeah.
You had a great interview with him.
So like Chris mentioned, we had Jacob Eason on when I was hosting for JMV last Tuesday. This was Panini Sporting Card, the company. They helped us out in getting this interview with Jacob. Unfortunately, could only get 10 minutes with them, but we haven't really heard from him at all this season, so was really happy that he did have some time for us. And here is Jacob Eason.
And welcome back to the Ride of JMV. Kevin Bowen filling in today for John. And let's head to the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline with, I guess he's the only Colt quarterback currently under contract right now. He is Jacob Eason joining us today, courtesy of Panini. Jacob, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. What's the offseason been like so far now? I guess about a month into it.
Yeah, I mean, I took a couple weeks there in the beginning just to kind of reflect and take some personal time and hang out with some family and you know, my girlfriend and lay low for a bit. But now we're getting back into the swing of things, kind of picking things up, you know, making sure I'm staying in shape and get back out in the field and going through the route trees and all that good stuff. So, you know, still got a lot of room and time to improve and grow. And I'm looking forward to getting back in there, back out to California and back to work soon.
Will you train in Cali or will you be in Indy much?
I'll be, you know, back and forth, obviously with our schedules coming up, but I'll be most of the time in California.
Chris Ballard talked at the end of the offseason about how he was really struck by kind of your exit meetings and felt like you learned a lot this season and really appreciated some of the answers that you gave to him. I guess what did you tell Chris in those exit meetings, and how would you summarize a year that might have been a red shirt, you know, from a playing standpoint, but I'm sure not really mentally?
Yeah, I mean, I had great exit meetings with all of my coaches and our GM Chris Ballard. You know, it's basically we kind of just discussed what had happened this season. You know, it was a unique year in terms of not having a preseason and not having OTAs and all that stuff. We had virtual OTAs. You know, what should you call it? But, you know, I think the biggest thing for me was the visualization and seeing the, you know, the mental side of the game and how, you know, Phillip and Jacoby and how these coaches coach and all those things. It was huge for me just to kind of go in and dissect that and learn and grow. Like every day, just being in the meetings with those guys and seeing how, you know, how they handled the everyday life of, you know, of being a professional quarterback was big for me. So, take that all. And you know, I wrote down a lot of things this season and, you know, being able to take what I learned this year and head into the off season and get ready for next year will be huge for me.
Take me inside those meeting rooms. Are you asking a bunch of questions? Are you just kind of a sponge soaking it all in? What's that like given?
Yeah, I wasn't a huge question asker this year, you know, just because I am a rookie and it was more Phillip's show because he was the starter. So I'd say, yeah, I was more of a sponge this year and a sponge with a pen pad and a notebook or whatever you call it. No, it was a great year in terms of my development from the mental side of the game, like I mentioned before. You know, a lot of back and forth between OC, head coach, Phillip and our QB coach. So, just being in those meetings and seeing the questions Phillips was asking, seeing what we're putting on tape and how Phillips is implementing that into the game plan, it was huge for me. So I think it was a tremendous year in terms of development and growth.
If you had to narrow it down to maybe one or two things that really struck you about Phillips' prep, what would that be?
That's a tough question. There's so many good qualities in Phillip that it's hard to dissect one or two. But I think, his consistency, not only in his preparation, but as a leader and a vocal guy in the locker room, and just his physical prowess. Obviously, he'd been in the league for 17 years, so guys knew who he was. But he was just a very consistent person, which was awesome to see. Every day he had the same attitude. His schedule was the same every single day. So just watching how he handled things, and the wins and the losses. That's another important thing. It's a game about winning, but seeing how a guy like that handles a loss is another key thing. So, it was a very tremendous year in terms of those things.
Jacob Eason joined us here on the Ride of the JMV. Thanks to Panini for helping us out with this interview. For those that don't know, Jacob, what are you doing today with Panini?
So I'm down here in Dallas with a handful of other rookies from this last year's class, signing some autographs, hanging out, talking ball with these guys and having some fun. It's good to get down here and connect with these guys and, ask them how their seasons went. I haven't seen them since, the draft and the combine and all that stuff. So it's been a good couple of days. I
have these stories. I remember riding the bus in elementary school and ripping some kid off for a Marvin Harrison rookie card. It still kind of keeps me up at night, which shows you probably how big of a loser I am. But did you collect cards back in the day?
I did. I wasn't humongous in collecting them, but I definitely had a couple binders full. My biggest guy was Peyton Manning, so I remember having 6 or 7 sheets full of his cards, which was awesome back in the day.
And obviously Peyton definitely going into the Hall of Fame this weekend as a first ballot guy. Transitioning back to that rookie year, I remember being at those Lucas Oil practices you had and really threw the ball really well. And I felt like maybe that was like your only real practice time, because you ran the scout team, right? When Phillip got hurt a little bit.
Towards the tail end of the year. Yeah.
So I guess what was a normal week like for Jacob Eason, Monday through Saturday?
It was the same as everyone else, just showing up, because, especially this year, you never know what's going to happen. One guy could test positive, that could lead to, 3 other guys sitting out. So it was a very unique year in that sense. My process was, I'm not the starter this year, but I'm going to prepare like I am and still actively participate in meetings, not asking a ton of questions, but mentally being locked in and loaded. So, from the preparation standpoint, I prepared like, I was going to go out there on Sundays, obviously I didn't, and then when it was Sundays, I had the call sheet and all that good stuff. And I was watching and trying to learn and see the dialogue that, what Phillip was doing and this and that. So I think, from the preparation standpoint and being in a room with those guys, it was huge.
I talked to Marcus Brady last week. He mentioned kind of footwork, maybe being the biggest physical aspect to it. Would you narrow that down to kind of the biggest physical thing you wanted to work on in your rookie year?
Yeah. I think there's always room for improvement in everything, whether it's the fundamentals and the mechanical side of the game or the mental side of the game, and I try to take, 1 or 2 things a day and work on those things. Yeah. Marcus is really good at coaching the fundamentals and physical side of the game. And we went out there and practiced 3-4 days a week, whatever, depending on the week and worked on those things. So going into the off season, I got a handful of things I've written down that I want to, start working on and we'll go from there.
Individually, what would you say is your biggest goal going into year 2?
I think my biggest goal is just to be as prepared as possible for whatever might happen. There's no telling, what goes on. And I think just from my perspective, I think just being as prepared as possible for whatever the situation may be. And then when the opportunity presents itself, then go take it. So, I'm excited to get back to Indy and obviously attack this off season.
You mentioned that list. What are maybe some of those things on the list that you're really focusing on?
Yeah, I don't want to get into too much detail, but, from the mechanical side of things, it's just, being more consistent, consistently throwing those accurate balls and making sure my feet are set underneath me. And, I think there's a handful of things that go along with the fundamental side of things that kind of all connect together. And So it'll be really honing in on the small details of being consistent, being accurate, and all those good things from the footwork, from the ground up. And then obviously the mental side of the game, there's always room for improvement, whether it's protections, seam coverage, going through, our own progressions and all that stuff. So there's a lot of things that I'm looking forward to continuing to improve on this offseason. And yeah.
We'll end with this. You got a favorite spot in Indy? I know obviously it was a kind of a crazy year, but
it was. A favorite spot, obviously St. Elmo's is a big one. I went there for a couple times this offseason, but this season. It's hard. It was hard to get out and get around there just because, I didn't want to, I was trying to stay COVID safe, and, there's a lot of responsibility on the line there. So hopefully next year things will be a little bit different as to where we can, go out with and be around people. So I'll give you a better answer next year.
I think I speak for everyone in Colts Nation. They're excited to see you on the field, hopefully first and, maybe OTAs, training camp, but certainly the preseason, get some game action. So appreciate the time today, Jacob, and enjoy the offseason, man.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kevin.
And right there, Jacob Eason, the most talked about Colt, certainly on social media, by far there. Didn't want to give away all the secrets, Chris, on what he's working on, but I do know footwork was probably the biggest physical aspect to it. And I did find, I don't know about you, I found the Rivers answer interesting about the biggest takeaway was just the amount of consistency you have to approach every game with. College football's weird. It's 1 week you're playing Eastern Washington, the next week you're at BYU, now you're playing a conference game, and sometimes you're playing on Friday, sometimes you're playing on different nights of the week, and games might not have the same magnitude. Obviously, you've got kids on campus telling you, oh, that team sucks, or, oh, you guys didn't cover, or, oh, boy, this girl wants to talk to you,
Right.
Got a lot of distractions in a much different way in professional football. So I do think that how well he observed and now translate that into his own work of what he watched Philip Rivers do will be a huge part of his development. Huge.
I was very impressed. Obviously, this is a minute thing. Some might think, for me, it was a big takeaway for whatever reason, how quickly he answered all the questions. There wasn't a lot of thinking about it. He was ready to go with everything that you asked him. I thought you asked some great questions, and I was impressed that he was ready to just fire off and go.
He's on top of it. Yeah. I remember Nick Sirianni saying earlier this year that he did feel like from a classroom standpoint, translating that to the field, the mental processing, which was a question, is something that they felt like he did a better job of. Now, again, mental processing with a red jersey versus, with a white or a blue jersey on, little bit different. But, I was glad that we were able to have Jacob. I think we'll have Naeem Hines on next week's podcast as well. So, been fun to get a few of these guest interviews in here, and I hope you guys enjoyed that.
And like I've mentioned the last couple of weeks, man, this offseason just does not feel like an offseason yet. There's just so much movement. We're still waiting for dominoes to fall from a quarterback perspective. Are we going to bring back Xavier Rhodes? I mean, there's still a lot to talk about on this podcast week in and week out.
There's tons. We're going to have a Beers with Bone at some point. We got to figure that out, but we definitely will. And we aren't even to the brunt of the favorite time, which is really the draft.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when things get, super excited and just so many scenarios. So we're going to keep it coming. And I guess now that we do get in Twitter questions, we probably should talk a little bit of quarterbacks here.
The first question we're going to jump into, Kevin, is from Jacob and David. They both want to know, okay, do you think the Colts would have gone to the Super Bowl if they would have gone all in on Tom Brady? And I think it's a question that a lot of people asked themselves the other night.
Yeah, this is a popular one for me, late on Sunday, well into Monday as well. First things first, did Brady/Giselle want to come here?
I laugh, but it's true. It's a true question.
I love Indianapolis. I love the state of Indiana. Love. Don't know.
You're not moving into Derek Jeter's mansion in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I just can't see that. Nice homes, beautiful homes, lots of great places to live. Not sure Giselle and Tom would have been here. That's first. And I want to make this very clear. The MVP of the Super Bowl on Sunday night should not have been Tom Brady. It should have been Todd Bowles and that entire defense.
Yes.
Tom Brady, extremely impressive throughout their playoff run at moments. When you look at the stats, they aren't incredible. I think he was like a 50% passer for several of those games. But still, in big-time moments, he delivered. But let's make this very clear. Their defense set the tone. So is Shaq Barrett coming? Is Jason Pierre-Paul coming? Vita Vea, the Colts loved. in the 2018 draft, 2017 draft. All the drafts kind of run together at this point. But, yeah, no. Tampa's D-line, that front seven, Devin White, they were the MVP. Tom Brady here, maybe you win the division. Maybe you're the third or fourth best team in the AFC instead of the seventh seed. Maybe, I don't know, get to the divisional round, something like that. But no, I don't think with Brady all of a sudden you are a Super Bowl winning team or anything like that. And it is funny how we talk about just how much luck can play into these things. If Jared Cook doesn't fumble in that divisional round game, do the Bucs get out of that game? I mean, they're down. Saints are driving to go up 2 scores at that point. If Tampa's playing behind 2 scores with just about a quarter to go, who knows? It's funny how just plays like that and how the parity of NFL, especially playoff games, is so close. But yeah, Tom Brady here, no. The Colts do not win a Super Bowl.
Okay, that's fair. Let's jump down to Sam and Jason. They both.
You disagree with that? You think Brady here, the Colts win it all?
You know what? I
thought Rivers played pretty well. I mean, maybe Brady improves the standard and I don't know, Gronk comes here and something like that. But
looking at, and again, there's a lot that goes into every game. It's not just one play. It's not just one person. The run that he went on to beat Breeze, Rodgers, and Mahomes. I just try to take myself through, okay, so first round we're playing Buffalo. Is he going to beat Josh Allen? Maybe. He did it for a while. Then you move on to Patrick Mahomes, who he just beat, and then you move on to where?
Yeah, I just think it's more than just Brady versus Allen, Brady versus Patrick Mahomes. I thought their defense set the tone, and their defense was really darn good all year long, and I thought Kansas City's offensive tackle situation was a huge part of that. Did they beat Kansas City when Eric Fisher's healthy? I don't know. I mean, Mahomes run for his life. He also had 3 or 4 balls hit dudes in the helmet. It's like, I think we're kind of underselling Rivers to a degree if Brady comes here as well. I mean, Rivers and Brady had pretty similar numbers. Now in the playoffs, it could be a totally different animal. But again, I feel like when they got Devin White back for that New Orleans game, that defense rose, and especially inside the red zone, was just tremendous. So,
and you're right. You look at Bowles, his 10 years, the last decade, he's always had one of the top defenses, and then he got kind of screwed with the Jets, which good for him to get out of there. Yeah. I mean, even though they let him go way earlier than I think they should have, he's the defensive standard.
Yeah. I mean, he's always been known, with Bruce Arians in Arizona.
Yeah.
Certainly been known as one of the best defensive coordinators in the league.
All right, Sam and Jason want to know, are we sure that investing in the offensive line is a bad thing? The Chiefs are loaded at wide receivers, tight end, defensive end, quarterback, and they just got smoked. Tampa won by being strong in their front seven, good quarterback play, and scheming things open. Is Ballard right on the team building? Yes, I know that Tampa's receivers were great all season, but nothing exceptional in the Super Bowl.
Boy, I got a lot of this, Chris, right away. Yes, the Chiefs got boat raced in the Super Bowl. Again, down their 2 starting offensive tackles. And do we forget, the Chiefs had just won 25 of 26 games?
Yeah.
I feel like all of a sudden people are acting like, oh, my God, this just goes to show you that if you invest in this and that. Well, I'm like, Chiefs are pretty darn good without an offensive line that I think we consider top 3 or 4. And, they're missing Eric Fisher, a former number 1 overall pick, and Mitchell Schwartz, who's a very good player as well, on the opposite side. So, you take Anthony Costanzo and Braden Smith out of the lineup here, and it's not going to look great. And again, Tampa's strength, if you would have called one position group their best, I would say it's their defensive line. Maybe their wideouts, but I would say their D-line is their strength. So it matched up perfectly. How to disrupt Mahomes. Their most injured group is also what has to block our best group. So I don't, is Ballard right on team building? I think building through the trenches is just fine. I also think you need to have a stud at quarterback. And that's very apparent from what we saw out of those Final Four teams and Kansas City making it to 3 straight AFC Championship games. And, really could have easily been in that 2018 Super Bowl and obviously in these last 2 Super Bowls. So I just think it goes to show you, Chris, a little bit of just offensive tackle depth. and that, you can get by maybe without one offensive tackle, but you got that second one out. And again, I know it's difficult to find. We saw it with the Colts here, but it just goes to show you that the importance of 7, 8, 9 up front couldn't be more clear.
Yeah. All right, we're going to go now to Sinclair, who asked about a gentleman that we talked about a little bit earlier. Do you think that the Colts could be interested in bringing Joe Hegg back and have him compete or take over at the left tackle spot?
I like Joe Hegg. I think he's a nice kind of sixth man, seventh man, Chris, but I would probably like a little bit more of an upgrade, to be honest with you. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I can't recall Joe Hegg playing a whole lot of left tackle when he was here anyways. I think he did a little bit, but not as much as he played guard or played a right tackle. So, I'd probably want a little bit more.
We going to have a Wentz-Hegg reunion?
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, they are boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, the North Dakota State connection. There aren't many of those in the league.
There are not, no.
Yeah, you could see that.
Let's stay with North Dakota State here for a second with a question from Beans. Do you see a kind of similar play style between Carson Wentz and Trey Lance? They both went to North Dakota State, and Wentz worked with Reich. Could it work with Lance?
Yeah, it's you can make some similarities. I don't see very tons and tons of similarities. And I guess I'll use this time to talk a little bit about the Carson Wentz situation. The Colts have very real interest in Carson Wentz. Frank Reich, you might call Carson Wentz the son Frank Reich never had. I mean, he loves Carson Wentz, and I think he really, really believes that he can resurrect him. Now, again, it's at what price? And we know compensation means a whole lot. I've seen some people in Philly have talked about, do you involve players in this situation? Is this something where Zach Ertz gets involved? He's been a name that's been rumored. Obviously, the Colts would then need to send some people, and then you've got the Nick Sirianni, Jonathan Gannon situation. They know the Colts roster on both sides really well. Philly needs DB help, as Jonathan Gannon said. You know what? Rocky C needs to change the scenery. Let's bring him here. That, I think, is just a part of it that, we heard the Colts maybe floated some players to Detroit for Stafford. I think that's something to keep in mind in all this. But, man, if this happens, again, it's Frank Reich's full-on belief, and it's Chris Ballard saying, I believe in you about Phillip Rivers, and now I'm going to believe in you about Carson Wentz. And, the thing about Wentz, it's interesting. I feel like of the somewhat available quarterbacks, realistic options, he probably offers the highest ceiling. He's played at an MVP level before.
Right.
Even 2018, 2019, he played at, better than average quarterback play. Now, last year it was just terrible, awful. How much of it was Wentz falling apart? How much of it was, I think they had 14 different offensive line starting combinations in 16 games. Was Wentz broken to a degree? There were some questions about how he handled coaching. I don't know. That would kind of worry me a little bit at that position as well. But I feel like Wentz and Reich align a whole lot off the field as well and how they live their lives. Now, some might totally rule that out. Some might say, I don't give a shit about that. I felt like Frank was too close with Adam Vinatieri, and it impacted his decision-making there. Fair, honest. That's something that I guess you should bring up. But, again, when you're talking about a higher ceiling, I do think Wentz offers you that sort of potential. Philly drafted a decent amount of skill guys, but, again, their offensive line just felt like broke down. Rightly or wrongly, I just don't know how much he was a big city guy. Did that play into it as well? And I think when Frank got to Philly, what was that, 2016? I think he became the OC there. I believe the Eagles had the 13th overall pick that year. And then they traded up twice. They traded up to 8 with Miami, the Kiko Alonso thing. Then they trade up again to 2 to get Wentz. You got to think Reich had a big influence on that. So he's always been a believer in Wentz, and obviously that 2017 season, man, was magical.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. No one was better on third down and in the red zone than Wentz. He's a great seam ball thrower vertically. I think he's got a nice arm to kind of pump it in there. But there are some questions. There's a reason why the Eagles are bailing 20-some months after they gave him such a big deal. He's only started one playoff game. That playoff game was a loss. I mean, there are fair questions to raise a red flag. I don't know about you, Chris. I feel like from Twitter, I feel like more skepticism from Colts fans. Now, maybe it's the compensation, the 2 first-round picks or whatever you want to throw in there. But if you're going to try and appease veteran vision / potential to win now with also being able to potentially ride this out for a handful of seasons, Wentz is probably the closest thing you're going to get free agency trade-wise. Like, who else? I mean, we don't know if Derek Carr is on the market.
Right.
Is Darnold? I mean, Darnold's never played at the level that Wentz has.
Ryan.
Darnold's never been in this system either. Now, would Darnold be cheaper? Of course. But to me, it's almost like you don't totally throw compensation out the window, Chris. But like I've said with the draft so often, no one name me what Kansas City gave up to go get Mahomes. What do you do? It costs them an extra 3rd-round pick.
Yeah.
If you hit on the guy, if the Rams go out and win 2 Super Bowls in the next 4 years, no one will say, man, I really wish they had that number 32 overall pick in the 2023 draft. They could have gotten no. So, again, and I know that's not how you have to think. Like, yes, there is some level of compensation where it just gets too rich. But I also believe that if you have that confidence and you're steadfast in that guy,
right.
Yeah, maybe. Now, I'm team draft, as I've stated numerous times, but I think I said on last week's podcast, or maybe a couple podcasts ago, if you're going to make me rank the current realistic QBs out there, it'd probably be Carr 1, and again, how realistic is he? I don't know. Probably Wentz 2, and then Darnold would be 3.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Yeah, and not to get too off topic, but just jumping back based on what you said there to Ballard, you also have to hit on him. You can't just jump up in the draft. You have to jump up and you have to hit on the player you're picking.
You will never hear me say that that's easy to do. Never. It is very difficult to do, and there's been so many teams, clearly the Rams and Eagles, that felt like they had the guy at one point, and now they're both bailing on the guy. It's not easy. But just because it's not easy means you should be scared from doing it. And if this draft class has the 5 or 6 QBs that can go top 15, top 20. But, it's last thing on Wentz. Mike Groh was his OC in Philly after Frank left. Mike Groh's here. There's been some reports from Philly. There was a disconnect here. Now, Press Taylor has been rumored to be kind of the QB passing game guy coming over. Wentz really likes him, but then some people from Philly, and I mean, I'm going on Philly radio tonight. Yeah. I'm like, oh boy, am I going to be are they just going to rip me a new one? They say that Press Taylor and Carson Wentz are super close, but that Press Taylor was too coddling to Carson Wentz. And Carson, took advantage of that and maybe didn't listen to him as much. And again, this is all Philly smoke. But I also think coming back to the Ballard quote, Chris, that he mentioned with Dan about how there's a reason why guys are on the trade market. There's a reason.
Yeah.
Was that in reference to anybody? I don't know. Maybe not. But it's just something that I've thought about as well.
Yeah, love the chess match that those GMs
You want
play.
Wentz?
I don't know, Kevin. It's to the point where it's like, whoever we get, I'm going to spin some sort of tale in my head to be like, no, he was Wentz was the number 2 pick. This, he would have won the MVP had he not torn his ACL. I mean, I'll spin it regardless, however I need to spin it to sleep at night. But yeah. I'm to the point where I'm just ready to see where the chips fall and go from there.
I think a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Now, me, I'm not. I want to keep this talk going until April 20th.
Well, yeah.
April 29th. Right. But no, I totally get that. And again, I think there are a lot of pros and cons. I've written a piece on 1075thefan.com that details a lot of the Frank Reich angle with all of this. I encourage people to check that out. I think it's just some stuff that we haven't really talked a whole lot about Wentz related. So go ahead and find that up on our website.
Let's stick with that Ballard conversation with a question from Denny. He says, with Ballard saying that there's no trade going down today, and this was him speaking obviously last week with Dan Dakich, with Wentz, do you think that they will make an offer, or is it him kind of steering away from it, saying we aren't going to go that way?
I think it's him steering away from Howie Roseman saying, that's the trade package? Literally. I think there's interest, valid interest, compensation.
Yeah.
I think that's the $1 million award in Chris Ballard's eyes.
This one's from Shot. Said, I don't like Ballard's response about Jacoby, Kevin, saying that he'll be in the mix. Oh, boy, is this going to be a long offseason. I've listened to it twice, and it's full of information, but, man, nothing scares me more than the enthusiasm he said it with. Glad he identified the holes at the premium positions and plans to address them, but none of it matters if he goes with Jacoby at quarterback.
You know, there's been a lot of this, and there's a lot of this chatter in our Colt Beat colleague group text about Jacoby. What did he say? Dan asked him very specifically, like, in the mix to re-sign or in the mix to play, and Chris said both.
Right.
And I think that got a lot of people being like, "Oh boy, this Friday commute home just took a wrong turn." Chris, I might be reading too much into this, but I think this is where we're at. Last year, Chris Ballard uttered the phrase about Jacoby, the jury is still out. I thought it was a very fine phrase to use. I didn't think it was damning. I don't think it was a rip of the player by any means. I thought it was a very fine statement to describe that. Now, some might say, oh, no, the jury certainly is in, and they have reached a conviction for sure. But, again, I thought it was a fine comment. Ballard hated the fact that he said that. Hated. He regrets saying that. Is he now going the other direction and so afraid to say anything publicly damaging of Jacoby that he's saying these sorts of things, even though his actions will say otherwise?
Because then he say he called him, or he was like,
called him and apologized.
I felt terrible for saying it that way.
Right. Which, that's fine as GM if, he feels like. And that's Chris. Chris is many times feels like it's a very player-driven thing with him. I know that full well and won't go too deep into that. But the Irsay aspect to that presser, Jim speaks for 50-some minutes, talks about quarterbacks for 35 of it.
Right.
No Jacoby Brissett anywhere in that. That obviously happened 2 weeks ago. Chris talks a week later. Again, is this Chris trying to – and I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but no, right? No.
Yeah. No.
No?
Please no. Just nothing. Don't take anything away from the guy. Obviously, a Walter Payton nominee, does a lot for the community.
And like him as a football player, a very good backup quarterback.
Yes.
Again, going back to your functional spot duty starter, fine. But functional for 16 games to the point of you got to win in January?
Yeah.
We've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen it. I had someone calling in the other day telling me that, oh, you're an idiot. You Carson Wentz and Jacoby are the same human. They've got the same career arc. I'm like, Jesus. When was Jacoby? Number one team in the NFC, and it's December, and these put up these MVP type numbers, the best on third down, the best in the red zone. Like, it was a 5-2 record for the Colts with a bunch of one possession wins, and it was. You could see that was not going to sustain. And I'll also say this about Jacoby. When he came back from that knee injury and played out the rest of the season, the one player publicly that made it very clear that the injury was no hindrance on him down the stretch was Marcus Brady, his then quarterback's coach, now offensive coordinator.
Right.
He made it very clear. Oh, no, that injury was fine in mid-November, late November. And then look at Jacoby's final 4 games, that Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Carolina, Jacksonville, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are numbers that'll, want to gouge your eyes out with. So, again, fine player, but I don't believe he'll be in the mix as much as you just read it off the table.
Right. Benji and Richard both want to know, in regards to Colts contingency draft picks and the plan for a quarterback, do you look for a partner to move up? If nothing happens, you draft needs like left tackle, edge, and corner. You bring in Eason, you let him play out a year. If he struggles, then you use the 2022 first-round pick for the quarterback.
This sounds like maybe some of your burner accounts, Chris, based off what you said last week. It's not the worst idea in the world to me. But, again, I cannot see Ballard ever going down that road. But, I mean, yeah, it's It's intriguing. It makes some sense on many levels of like you're further building a team around this guy. You're seeing Eason. You're having a 16-game dress rehearsal. All of this. Theoretically, if he bottoms out, you have the high draft pick. If not, you're continuing to build around him. Yeah, I mean, all of those check the boxes. I just know how NFL teams operate, and they rarely do this. And I would say the Colts would be on the end of the spectrum that would never do it.
But hey, we're just cracking the window.
Yeah.
You know?
We're cracking the window this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of snow out there for the
We had
local.
the power go out of the Bowen household yesterday. We had Rosie come home sick from daycare, and Kevin's cell phone stopped working unless he was on Wi-Fi. It was like...
Sweet. Nice.
It's like Monday or Friday. Like, what?
Yeah.
Can we breathe? Yeah. There was some wine drank in the Bowen household on Monday night.
All right, we'll keep that wine bottle open because we have a question from Andrew.
Ooh.
About Andrew.
Oh, God.
Every media personality around the Colts.
Trace. Is that in the studio?
We still got some. Every media personality around the Colts acts like Andrew Luck. Question is QAnon. I believe I said that right. I'm not really
Wow, I didn't know Andrew was going there. Okay.
Level conspiracy theory. But if you were Ballard, you have to make the call, don't you? Also, how has Luck stayed in Indy all this time without being bombarded with quarterback-thirsty Colts fans begging him to come back?
Wow, that's a lot there. Yeah, I think I said this on JMV last Wednesday. I don't laugh off the Luck questions. I don't, because he shocked everyone out there with his retirement. If he were to ever come back, he would shock us again, because that's him and that's his team. His team is his uncle, who was his, I think his mom's mom married Will Wilson, so it's not the Oliver Luck side of it. It's his mom. So Will Wilson's his agent. Will Wilson, I don't think represents any other NFL players, so he has no agenda. Let alone it's his freaking nephew. Like, he doesn't need to be leaking things to Mortensen or Schefter or whoever there. How has Luck stayed in Indy all the time without being bombarded with QB thirsty Colts fans? He's going to Books and Brews, and he's throwing. He's going to Siam Square. I mean, I don't think he's going to the place maybe the diehards of the diehards go.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't talked to a lot of people that have seen Luck in public, but a few, and they're like, he's fine. He takes a picture with my kids, and I don't know. Are that many people like, Andrew, man, you got to come back, dude. We'd do anything for you. Like, knowing Andrew, he just tipped his cap and walked to his car.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
And it's different when you're in person. People would say. When you're
100%,
when you're face to face with Andrew Luck,
exactly.
It's, hey man, really appreciate all the great memories. Hope you're doing well.
100%. Oh, hey, Mr. Shaq. Wow, you're a lot bigger in person. It's like seeing David Baker from the Hall of Fame. Oh my God,
he's huge.
He's the biggest human being I've seen in person. Bigger than Yao Ming. But yeah, Irsay, I thought put out that fire. Pretty. The one thing I didn't like about Irsay's comment was Colts fans need to digest this. He had that phrase in there. I'm like, well, Jim, you're the one that keeps screw the window. You've got the door wide open. Right. And like, again, you can Irsay and Ballard and Reich, they all have conversations with Andrew Luck. You have the conversation, and as Chris says, or Jim certainly says, like, he would tell me if he wants to come back. I don't need to pry this. It's not like Andrew Luck in 10 years is going to be like, hey, you never asked. All you got to do is ask. Screw that. If you're going to make me, like, pick and prod like that, like, no, you've got to be, you can't be 100% in. You got to be 110% in, as I, utter my high school football coach, like, first day of 2 days. No, we can't be 100%. We got to be 110%. Blah, blah, blah. What's Joey's coach name? Coach Burns.
Coach Burns, yeah.
I feel like I'm Coach Burns right now. But again, just lastly on Irsay, there's a reason why I asked Jim or on Luck. There's a reason why I asked Irsay that question a few weeks ago. Yeah. You have to ask it. You never know what he's going to say. I've heard crazy morsels from this and that, and not even just from like people here in town. I mean, we're talking like this person who's coached Luck and at a different stop, and I'm just like, whoa, this is the most I've ever heard it. They're all and I'm not talking about homeboy Mike who created the fake text and all that.
Yeah.
No. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like other stuff. And I'm like, it's he's under the team control, his 5-year extension, extends through this year. So I'm like, you got to ask him. Mm-hmm. And I feel like an idiot. And if it were ever to happen, it would happen in this month. Luck's not a dumbass. He knows full well that They need to know how free agency rolls and everything. But as Chris said to Dan, he will not be the starter in 2022, and he's not coming back. Or 2021, he's not coming back. So there we are with the old Andrew Luck.
Well, let's keep it with Luck just a tad from a longtime listener question from JJ. Said, I haven't heard much about the Colts being culpable in Luck's retirement. Everyone in town blames Luck for bolting, but no one blames the Colts for not having a clue that he might retire or sit out another season. It seems to me that there was more signs that he wouldn't play than that he would, and there's no backup plan in case he quits. What are your thoughts on that?
JJ, what's your backup plan? Like, draft Sam Darnold? Draft Josh Allen? Boy, you talk about red flags right then in April. I mean, Andrew Luck played in the Pro Bowl after that 2018 season. I mean, if dudes have a fingernail that just didn't get cut properly, they're not playing in the Pro Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And that Pro Bowl was terrible weather. And he's playing in it. Like, no, I mean, Jacoby was your backup. That's, again, a more than adequate backup quarterback. I have no issue whatsoever. And that was one thing I thought Chris was pretty adamant about with Dan.
Yeah.
Hey, I did not see this coming.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy's practicing. It's not a serious injury. I don't fault him at all.
No.
I don't.
Does the Goff trade confirm that if the Colts traded for Wentz, it would be the Colts who receive draft compensation? For example, the Eagles would send Wentz in a second-round pick to the Colts for us taking the cap hit and solving their Wentz problems. Previously, I thought the Colts would have to give up some capital, but the Goff-Stafford trade has me thinking otherwise. That's from Jordy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what the Carson Wentz trade looks like, Chris. Whoever is involved, whichever team, because I am, really when you look at it and you break down his contract, yes, he's under contract for 4 more years. It's really only a 2-year, $47 million responsibility, I guess maybe is the word, that the team trading for him would take on. Philly's going to take on a pretty big cap hit.
Right.
But again, it's not as damning as you would think. I still feel like you've got to give up a first-round pick for him. I don't know. Maybe that's... Yeah, again, I'm not all first-round picks are the same, obviously, but I think that would be the case there. One thing that I feel like, Wentz might be the only one, Chris, that would achieve this, but I don't know if there's a quarterback move the Colts could make in the next 2.5 months that would rule out the draft for me. Like, let's say you go make a move for, I don't know, trade a 4th-round pick for Darnold, 3rd-round pick. I have no idea. Maybe it'll cost more for Darnold. Maybe it'd be a 2nd or 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go, maybe you sign, Nick Foles to it, or you trade for Nick Foles, and he's your quarterback for 2 years. Whatever. If that draft board starts falling on April 29th, and that QB starts falling, that cannot restrict you from making that sort of move. Again, I'm a big believer in you go find the guy. The guy doesn't necessarily find you. How many times have you really seen a quarterback fall into your lap, quote unquote? But Wentz would maybe be the only one where, like I was saying earlier, there are some long-term ramifications for this move. Not as big financially as you would think. Again, 2-year, $47 million. It's notable, but it's not earth-shattering. What really is the long-term ramification is this. Carson Wentz is your quarterback for 2 years. So if you go 9-7, 8-8, and don't go far in the playoffs, the long-term ramifications is that window that was cracked, now all of a sudden those players are starting to get cracked who you had in those 22, 23, 24, et cetera ages.
Yeah.
And now you've delayed the quarterback thing even longer.
This question's from Craig. Hey, Kevin, I was wondering about the effects on COVID and how that will affect the quarterback selection for the Colts. Given Eason was not able to participate at all due to no preseason because of COVID restrictions, do you think Ballard will lean more towards going with a veteran who can come in, learn the system faster? It's likely COVID will linger into the fall. That seemed to be a major advantage for Rivers, given that he knew Reich and had worked together in the past. Does this make the Wentz trade even more likely?
Craig makes a lot of good points there, but let me make this clear. You cannot make a long-term decision at quarterback based off COVID and what it might do for the 2021 season. Okay, so you're going to be virtual in the offseason program. All right, training camp might be, hair limited. Maybe you play 1 or 2 preseason games. I don't care. in no way, shape, or form can you have that short term of thinking. Is it a nice benefit to bringing in Wentz? Sure. And, I mean, Irsay pointed out that Rivers had an advantage with being in the system. But, no. In no way can I sit here and say that, you know, COVID and the lack of an offseason program and this should impact who you have as your quarterback here in 2021 and beyond. Like, this is a much bigger decision than just this season. I think oftentimes we just forget about that. Like, okay, who will give you better quarterback play in 2021 than Rivers? You know, there's not a lot of great answers out there for that. Okay, it's something we just have to accept. I think, you know, we just got to accept that, and we got to move forward with that line of thinking there. So, no, I don't think – I get it. It's not going to be, you know, as normal as you would like it to be, but I also don't think it's going to be super, super restrictive. Like, I think you're still going to play some preseason games. And if not, okay, whoop-de-doo. You still find the best player and you move on.
Let's lighten things up a little bit with a question from Spoken Word, who read your article on impending free agents. Wants to know, what organizations or situations would you be happy to see Hilton, Jacoby, and Hooker play for? Says personally, he wouldn't want to keep T.Y., but wouldn't mind seeing him in things in Seattle.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Russell Wilson, Seahawks action. Yeah. You know, the two teams that keep on coming back for T.Y., what about Baltimore? I feel like they're always kind of in a quarterback or a wideout need, and then Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously T.Y. from that area, and Tua could certainly use some help. Now, you know, if they take Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith at 3 overall, you know, maybe that would, you know, impact how many touches, but obviously Hilton would make a decision well before that.
Yeah, I mean, you have Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, and then T.Y. Hilton. That's not a bad receiver.
And even like a Hilton mentoring a young Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith, you know, that would be pretty enticing if I'm Miami there. Now T.Y. might say, well, boy, I'd like someone that can get it vertically to me a little bit more than Tua, and we'll see if they open up things more for Tua. Jacoby, you know, I've said, what about New England? What about Washington? I feel like they're really up in the air. Hooker, I don't know. I find me some single high defenses that he can kind of roam back there. And I really hope Anthony Walker I know he didn't mention Walker. I hope Anthony Walker finds a good landing spot for him.
Yeah. Omari listens to the podcast weekly.
I love that. Thank you, Omari.
Says, I think we really need quarterback, most importantly, a mobile one. He said, I'd stay away from Wentz, but what other choices do you think best fits the Colts? Personally, he likes Sam Darnold and the connection that he might be able to make with Reich, but he also likes Mac Jones from Alabama. What are your thoughts on that? Also, to all the Colts fans, can we stop with the Jacob Eason talk? He's a 4th rounder for a reason. No, we will not stop with the talk.
Wow. That is, was that directed to old Chris Presley there?
Bring it on. Let's go. It's something that needs to be talked about.
So he wants mobile?
Yes.
I think Wentz is fairly mobile. I mean, I don't like.
He's more mobile than Mac Jones. Mac Jones isn't going to be. He's going to be your traditional pocket passer.
That's a great point. You know, the whole Mac Jones one is going to be fascinating to me, Chris. Like, we've only seen Mac Jones operate with creative players. Created, not creative. Maybe they are creative as well, but they're like video game.
Yes.
Like, Najee Harris, did you see him hurdle? The guy from Notre Dame?
Yeah.
Nick McLeod, I think it was. I think Nick McLeod's like fairly tall and just. Yeah. Yeah, Darnold definitely has some athleticism and some arm talent as well. So, again, when I say mobile, I'm not talking anything, you know, we don't need Usain Bolt back there, but just a little bit of subtleties in that movement. Did you see I retweeted early Monday morning, did you see the drawing of Mahomes' scrambling versus Brady scrambling?
No.
Like what that looked like?
Uh-uh.
So someone like, you know, computer generated, you know, some plug in a bunch of, I have no idea how it was made, but basically Brady scrambled to, like, in the pocket, his movement, a yard here, a foot here.
Yeah.
They added up like 37 yards for the whole game. Mahomes, how much? How much do you think?
I did hear that it was close to 500 yards, right?
Yeah, 4.5 football fields.
Nuts.
I mean, like,
The amount of times he went left and then right, like
Yeah.
every time he was scrambling, he was a double move scramble.
Part of me's like, man, can he not step up in the pocket? And then I'm like, wait, Vita Vea and Dominic Sue are right there. And
Yeah.
just such a cluster. Yeah, and I mean, Eason was a 4th-round pick. Yeah, you're right. I do think we forget that at times, but there's tons of growth. There's tons of patience. And some teams are just afraid, I think, to commit to that in early rounds, which I get it. Like, committing to a quarterback like that in early rounds is a risk.
Mhm.
And the Colts, I think, felt like they were in a position where they could be patient with that for several seasons. And we'll see.
Yeah. All right, this is from Colton. Do you think we should draft a tight end this year, possibly Kyle Pitts, or should we ride with Mo? I'm not sure that he can be a true tight end number 1, just due to the fact that we don't utilize him as much as we should.
Part of me kind of trusts this team, Chris, in finding tight ends later. But I do think Kyle Pitts can be a damn good football player. Tight end, 21 overall, just a hair rich for me. I get it. If Pitts is Kelsey, it's not rich at all. If Pitts is Darren Waller, it's not rich at all. But I just think he got more pressing needs elsewhere.
I agree.
And it's not like Doyle's a free agent. Ali Cox is a restricted free agent. Doyle still got one more year. You could bring back Burton. So, yeah.
This one comes from Isaac. Do teams need to abandon the best possible philosophy when the position that holds the needs as value as quarterback and left tackle?
He's going best player.
Yes.
That debate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question. I think best player available is a little overrated. Like, okay, if the best player available is a center for the Colts at pick 21, I don't think they're picking a center.
Right.
If when the Chiefs get on the board at 32 and it's Kyle Trask is the best player available, I don't think they're taking Kyle Trask. So I just think it's always with a grain of position value. And Irsay, I think, Ballard has mentioned this before. Like, he really values trench guys. If it's close with that, he'll probably go with the trench over that. I think that plays into it as well. It's not just here's the board and you just peel one off. Like, there is some debate over it. And I think you also have clusters. 34 to 38 on your board can be very, very close together, and maybe 44 to 47 is more of a drop, something like that.
Yeah, let's not forget that Philip Dorsett was the best available years ago when we made that draft pick.
I'll never forget that night. Oh, boy.
All right, this question comes from Scotty. Here's why I believe Watson can happen. Watson was a genius in the signing of his most recent contract. He got paid and added a no-trade clause, which means that the Texans can ship him or can't ship him wherever they want, only where he wants to go. Could he want to go to an already made team while throwing up the middle finger to his former organization? What do you think about that?
Yeah, what's middle finger, what's best fit? I mean, Cal McNair might be the dumbest owner in sports. And, I think the Colts are a great, great spot for him. And no one's a perfect spot. But, when you say ready-made team, would he be nervous about what the left tackle looks like? And, again, I still just feel like they figure it out. I don't know how. You would hope he could fire Jack Easterby, but, like, but, yeah, it's Scotty, I don't see Watson just saying Colts are bust.
Yeah.
I don't see that.
Edward says a hypothetical for you. The Jets call and say they want Darius Leonard, Quentin Nelson, and Jacob Eason for the second pick, and they will throw in Jamison Crowder. Do you do it?
Whoa. Give that to me again.
Darius Leonard, Quentin Nelson, Jacob Eason. We get the second pick in the draft and Jamison Crowder.
Wow. That's a wild trade. Man. Darius Leonard, Quentin Nelson, Jacob Eason for the second pick and Jamison Crowder. I'd probably do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think quarterback means that much.
So the left side of your line's gone? You're okay with just trying to rebuild that?
Okay, so you're drafting the left tackle of the future at 21.
Okay.
You're saying Danny Pinter, let's go. You look at Bobby Okereke and you really say, let's go. You probably re-sign Anthony Walker.
I was going to say you keep Walker then, yeah.
Sign Allen Robinson. I don't know. Jamison Crowder,
yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather have a New York pizza. Some people might say, no, you can't do it because you can't trade Eason. I don't know. Maybe now that I'm talking out loud, maybe it's too rich. But I do think quarterback means a whole lot.
Yeah.
Is that dumb?
No.
Are you saying no way?
Initially, I said no way, but it's nice to hear other people's opinions and thoughts. I think that's why people listen to the podcast, obviously. Yeah. And that's why people ask the question. You don't know unless you ask, right?
Yeah. That's a wild trade.
Mm-hmm.
I trust Chris Ballard to draft. And with there, I'm still having my draft picks.
True.
And I got a rookie on a rookie. I got a rookie quarterback. Don't have to pay Nelson. Don't have to pay Leonard. Me talking myself into this is hilarious.
That's true. You do save a lot in cap. Let's stick with Darius Leonard with a question from Tristan. I don't know if you've seen this. You probably have. Darius flirting with the ideas of joining the WWE. Pat McAfee leaving early for outside opportunity makes me a little bit worried. Are you worried about Darius?
Oh, wow. Is this serious?
I know.
I know he loves WWE. Darius.
Yeah, he was. They did a little promo. I didn't watch all of it, and I'm not too in the know with it. But him and Triple H going back and forth at each other, entertainment value was definitely there.
Yeah. He'd be a great personality.
Yeah.
I can't tell if Tristan's asking this seriously, so I guess I'll answer it seriously. No, I'm not worried. Pat was older. Pat had made some decent money.
Mm-hmm.
Darius still hasn't got to his second contract. And Pat hated Ryan Grigson.
And Pat knew Pat was tired of hurting every day.
Yeah,
his knee, yeah. Because he's contemplated coming back to the NFL, and he would do some workshop things and realize, my knee's going to flare up every time. I just can't.
Yeah, and Pat has obviously made an incredible career, post-football career, out of this. Darius lives, breathes football.
Mm-hmm. When you're doing a Pro Bowl in your side yard for fun.
Like he put on the pads.
Yeah, he loves football.
That was incredible. Yeah, Tristan, great back-to-back questions here.
Right. This one comes from Sean. Will the Colts get a compensatory pick for Sirianni leaving? Just wondering, since Baltimore seems to be getting 2/3 as a comp for their offensive coordinator going to Houston.
I thought that was just a minority thing. I thought it was just a minority candidate thing, and David Culley is minority, and so I think that's why. Maybe I need to look into that, Sean, but no, I don't think the Colts would be getting any sort of compensatory picks for Sirianni. Maybe I need to look into that more.
This question comes from John. The Colts are a few teams with a good cap situation this offseason with the cap going down. That being said, there are quite a few fantastic free agents on the market at receiver, edge rusher, secondary, and to the lesser extent tight end. Do you think the Colts could use our $68 million and go get a big fish like Shaq Barrett and Allen Robinson, or do you think Ballard will wait for everyone to use a little bit of cap while they have and get a guy like Carl Lawson and Corey Davis for a significant discount?
Yeah, one thing you got to keep in mind again is how much of that cap does he want to leave for those extensions? Nelson, Leonard, Braden Smith, etc. And again, it doesn't sound like the cap's going down as much. As I mentioned earlier, the cap casualties is something to keep in mind as well. I kind of look at it like this, Chris. Okay. If your main guys to sign right now are Al-Qadim Muhammad, let's say Danico Autry.
Mm-hmm.
That leaves like 55 or 60 million right there in cap space to go out and you could sign 3 or 4 top flight guys. Now, they won't.
Right.
That's not how it'll unfold, but you certainly will have room. And then you also got to get into, okay, is Chris Godwin getting franchise tag? Is Shaq Barrett re-signing? What happens with the franchise tag? Someone mentioned to me, what about Xavier Rhodes? That's interesting. Carl Lawson's going to make some money.
Yes.
But Corey Davis, that's that second-tier free agent that...
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Is probably more in line with kind of how Chris thinks. So, I'm just going off Ballard past precedent. I don't know about one of the big fish. But he typically likes to wait a little bit and just see what the second-tier group goes with.
All right, just a few more here on this loaded podcast. This one comes from a new listener, and Isaac. Isaac, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing if you have on the YouTube for sure.
Yeah, thank you for that, Isaac. Man, this is a long podcast. I'm just now looking at the clock. Sorry about that.
Wants to know about the priority level of offensive playmakers. Do you think Ballard needs to go out and get someone like a Robinson or Galladay for this team to click?
I'd like for it. I mean, Irsay says it's big. I think you need one more. I think you need a dude that can just go do it with the football in his hand. But again, I don't think Ballard views it in that same light.
Based on this year's rookie class in terms of quarterback, Shad wants to know, where would you rank Jacob Eason? Personally, he has him behind Fields, Wilson, Lawrence, and Lance.
Boy, it's such a tough question because, Eason obviously didn't play that final season at Washington. So Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, Lance. So we'd have Mac Jones and Kyle Trask
behind
him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd probably put him in that group. Jacob was so good at Washington in the red zone. Then you look at his third down stats, and it's like, oh my gosh, just an abomination of third down efficiency there. The one thing I'll say about Eason, Chris, is this. There's a standard at quarterback, fairly or unfairly. I say fairly because you look at how much money the quarterbacks make, and it speaks for itself. Right. You are held to a higher standard from a work ethic, from a professionalism standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. I was listening to an interview earlier this year. I think maybe it was Kyler Murray doing the interview or Larry Fitzgerald doing the interview. And basically one of them said that Fitz kind of took to Kyler after his rookie season, been like, hey, man, I know you're more of an introvert. That's fine, but we've got to get you to just be a little bit more of, let's go talk to the O-lineman. Let's go talk to the running backs. Let's go talk to the wideouts. Like, you can't just be in the corner of the library reading a book. And again, there are different personalities with so many quarterbacks. And by no means am I asking, my QB to be the class clown or be the, super, super vocal. But I just think when you talk about all the boxes, and that's what I worry about with Eason, is from a work ethic, leadership, classroom standpoint, is he an 11 out of 10? Or is he a 7 out of 10? 7 out of 10 is fine. You're 7 out of 10 at other positions, you can probably get by. But a quarterback, to last, to play at that level, you got to be higher than that. So I just think that's so hard to gauge, and I might be very unfair in that criticism. But it's a concern I've got.
Kevin Bryan feels like bringing Peyton in seemed more of like a pandering move. Was he brought in to eventually sell Foles and Wentz to the fans? If the Colts need Manning's input on big decisions, why not just make him a coach or a GM?
So I think Brian is referencing, I believe Jim Aiello had this, Frank Reich has talked to Peyton about the future quarterback. And I have no issues with that whatsoever. You're obviously calling tons and tons of people to try and get background, and you get opinions, and then you make your own decision. That's what you do. So, yeah, Peyton is not going to be the GM. Chris Ballard is your general manager, and for a long time.
All right, Sean has another hypothetical for you, Kevin. Let's say that Lawrence makes it known that he does not want to play for the Jets. The Jets make it known that their asking price is 3 first-round picks and a 2021 second-round pick. If you're the Colts, do you do it knowing that getting Lawrence makes you a contender for at least the next 3 years, and so you're giving up the late 20s first-round picks, and Ballard has been so good at getting talent in the second and third rounds, Leonard, Smith, Blackman, for example.
Yeah. I'd probably do it. Again, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is generational, but I mean, it's a lot, but it's not like, okay, I'm giving up 21 and then 2 more first round picks. I mean, it's literally, in a way, it's similar to what the Rams feel like they've given up. You kind of have a similar draft outlook to what the Rams do over the next couple of cycles. So, plus, I don't look at it like you're a contender for at least the next 3 years. Again, I'm thinking to myself, I'm a contender for quite a while there, and you hope Trevor Lawrence can play good football on the rookie contract.
Right. Damon wants to know if you saw Vinatieri on McAfee's podcast and show on Sirius. It sounds like Vinatieri is looking to return.
It's so funny, and again, it's just a sad mind that I have. I literally thought Sunday morning to myself, I'm like, man, did Adam Vinatieri ever retire?
Not officially.
I was like, that kind of went quietly. And so then, sure enough, boom, Chris Ballard, Pat McAfee has Vinatieri on his Super Bowl preview show, and Vinatieri acted like he was very open to possibly kicking again. Yeah. Says he's finally healthy and battled that knee and longer rehab than maybe he thought originally, and he's not he's definitely not retired by any means. Is he retired? He coached his son up at Zionsville this year, But yeah, I don't know if you saw the interview, but I got the impression that Vinatieri, even though he looked like Tim Allen in the interview, I felt like he's open to it. I can't believe he's going to be 49 in December.
Yeah. It's good for him. If he's feeling healthy, I don't know who takes the waiver on him, but it's worth a call, right? It's worth at least bringing in for training camp or a practice.
Not in Indianapolis, but yeah, somewhere
Not here.
else.
No.
Yeah. Here, no. I can't do my heart can't do that again. No.
Wyatt wants to know if you had unlimited lifetime contracts, or if you had an unlimited lifetime contracts that was limited to strictly Colts players. Name everyone that you would lock down on offense, defense, and special teams.
Okay, unlimited lifetime contracts, strictly to Colts players. Okay, I like this. This is creative. Nelson, Leonard, Braden Smith, Kenny Moore, Buckner, Pittman, probably Kari Willis. I think Kari Willis could be a really, really good 10-year pro.
Yeah. I heard his name in rumors about trade packages.
Yeah.
Just that's the type of player you would probably have to give up.
Fair. Yeah, I think he's gonna be a good player. So yeah, those are the names.
All right, well, we're going to close out Twitter questions with one more from Trevor about Swag Kelly. I like the idea of bringing him.
Chad Kelly?
He goes by Swag, doesn't he? I like the idea of bringing him back as a backup. What do you think?
Wow. Is this also a real question, Trevor? Is he serious?
Yeah, they're all serious.
I don't believe Swag got picked up anywhere after his cut here, which was I feel like early in the year, September or something. So, yeah, I don't think. Aren't we on to Jacob Eason? You know, I think we've moved on from old Swag. So, good run for Chad. Nice that his last name was Kelly, but I enjoy watching him. I thought he was a fine QB. He was nice to me, but again, I talk about kind of what it takes to be that quarterback.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah.
That's fair. All right. Well, that wraps up Twitter questions, Kevin.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, boy, it's a long podcast. Hopefully, no Carson Wentz news happens anytime soon, or else, whatever. So he's Chris Presley. I'm Kevin Bowen. We'll be back next week. Naeem Hines on next week's podcast. And then, starting next week, man, it's a month till free agency.
Yeah.
So we'll get a lot more into that stuff. As always, KBowen1070 on Twitter, where you can find me. He's Chris Presley. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great week. 1075thefan.com has all your latest Colts content.